Rah!
I'm angry about cats.
When did we all get this dumb? Almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear warfare. I don't see any bodies, so it doesn't count.
I'm angry about cats.
I'm the chef. I want to hear one thing. Yes, chef.
Come on, man. Use your brain.
The Why I'm Angry podcast starts now.
Oh, yes, it does. This is the Why I'm Angry podcast. I'm on here at the Freestyle Studio. It is Chef Aaron. Sorry we haven't been on in the last few weeks here. We actually recorded last week and had some recording issues. When I went to go to edit, it was only me. It sounded like I was answering questions from myself. So I apologize with that. And then this week, the other guys had some prior commitments and couldn't get on. So it's just the chef tonight. You're just going to have to muddle through somehow with me. And I'm also going to be putting this on our YouTube page also. So if you get on YouTube, search out the Why I'm Angry podcast and jump on. You can see what I look like. Check out a little snippet of the studio here, and get a good look at us or me. So some things we got into on the last podcast that I thought were pretty important, or one major issue that we're gonna hit on this week, and I'll keep it short this week on it. But one of the things I thought was really important is that they're getting ready to vote on and sign into law a gig workers contractor or law, I guess, or bill that would take gig workers, or what we used to call freelancers, or people who have are contract workers. There's basically the people, if you don't work for the company and you work on a 1099, and maybe you don't have a full-on company and you're working for another company as just a single entity worker, it would take you and turn you into a employee of that company. So you would no longer have to take a 1099 out. You would just be part of that company as an employee, which would then allow you to get insurance and benefits, the 401k program, all of that good stuff, which sounds really good if you're an employee. But the thing we don't think about is, for one, how much that costs the company. That's pretty obvious that's going to cost the company a lot more money, and that's probably why they were using you as a contract worker anyway. They could pay you a little bit more as a contract worker, and then kind of split the difference in what it would cost you to do the full benefits package, because a lot of times the full benefits package almost equals your salary. So if you're getting paid, $25,000-$30,000 a year on the low side of things, as a worker, as an employee, you're really getting paid somewhere around $45,000 to $50,000 as for your actual benefit program, with insurance and with the 401ks and the profit sharings and whatever else you get inside the with the discounts you get for being part of your company and things like that, and then the overtime and just any incentive programs, Christmas bonus or Christmas dinners and stuff like that. All of those things, paid holidays and stuff like that. So what they look at with a contract worker is we can pay them a little bit more. Maybe as a contract worker, instead of getting the $30,000 a year, you would get paid $40,000 a year, and then they would save about $5,000 to $10,000 a year on you. So that's the business side of it, is that now they wouldn't have the option of making you a contract worker, or they would have to work you in a different way to make you a contract worker. You would either have to start your own 501c3, or you would have to do something like, or not 501c3, you'd have to start your own company, whether that's an LLC or a partnership or just a company, as it stands, a registered company, where now if you want, you can work on your social security number, and obviously you're liable, and if you don't have insurance and stuff like that, that comes back on you, as you get sued personally, and they can take your house and things like that. And that's not what we're here to talk about, but at the same time, you have that option then, to work as yourself, as a freelance employee, with as a freelance person in your own company. Take the hours you want, don't take the hours you want. Drop the contract, get different contracts, go on and here or there. And it just, and that's your business. It's not, you're not working for a company 9 to 5, clocking in and clocking out, coming in today or not coming in today. And that works really well for maintenance workers and things like that also. I know that I was hoping that Honest Abe was on, because he's a contract worker. And so with him, I don't know that it would really hook into his deal, but it would then, then what's he get paid for travel? Because he travels all the time. Does he just get paid an hourly rate? He can't. As a W-2 worker, you don't really write off all of your expenses as much. You can, but it's different, because the company's supposed to provide some of that in your wage and stuff like that. So it just begins a whole nother set of issues. And so we were talking about it, and with that, the companies, what they're saying is companies like Uber, who already, most people don't see this, but already have taken a huge beating because of the whole driving, issues and stuff like that, from, losing court battles to be taxi cabs and stuff like that. And already going into some of this, some of these laws that would consider their employees, contract or gig workers that would be considered employees now. And so they've already in certain areas like England and London, in that area, or in the United Kingdom or Great Britain or whatever you want to call it, and in parts of the U.S. even in a lot of places in California, they have that issue where they've already created, they've already decided that, courts have come down against them, that they're employees, and that that Uber or Lyft has to be a contract, a employer, and so then they have to go through and get like cabbie licenses and things like that, so that they can run under the legal guise or legal statutes for their areas. And so in that, Uber has already taken huge hits, and then COVID came along, and with all of the restrictions and things like that, and you don't want people in your cars and all that. And so with that kind of thing, this just puts another strain on them. And so if they take all of the same, if they take everybody that's already driving for Uber or Lyft or whatever, they figured it up that it will cost them anywhere from 20 to 30% more. So what used to be a win-win for everybody, Uber makes good money, drivers make decent money, we get a deal as consumers, becomes less of a win for pretty much everybody. Uber makes less money, Drivers are going to take the hit also because Uber's not going to pay them as much, and we're going to take the hit because they're going to pass that along to us. And so, when you get into these kind of things, one little deal, especially when you start a company, you start a company based on fixed cost and then variable cost. And one of the fixed costs here is that when a person drives, they make this much money. And when they drive this much more, they make this much more money. And now and you didn't have to pay them unless they drove. Where with this, you still pay their insurance, whether they're driving or if they choose to take insurance, you still have a certain liability. Plus, one thing that you don't think about also is if you're now an employee, your car now has to be insured through the company to be able to be used by the company. So now they have rights on your car, they have rights on what you drive, which they already have certain guidelines and things like that they say, we want you to drive this car or that car or not, this year, make of car or whatever. You have to tell them what you got and, sometimes take photos and things like that of it. But because your car now represents them as a company. So I understand that a little bit. But part of it also is now that, if they have an age limit on your car and your car now is too old for them, they have, you're an employee. They can either fire you, or they can, require you to get a newer car, where before, and you lose whatever benefits, which at one point, and in some states, is still a thing that if you have benefits with one person at their job, then you can't have benefits there. If that benefit, if that insurance goes out, then you have to work on getting, there's times of lapse of insurance, things like that. And it seems to happen that the second your insurance lapse is the second that you have an issue or something like that. So, I mean, that, God forbid, and all that you have those kind of things, but it's just a giant snowball. And so, and I think it's a lot of things that if you don't have a job or you haven't worked in this kind of job, that you don't think about. That we're out there, we're making laws that honestly we made the law. We're working within the confines of that law. That some workers get so many benefits because they are this and that, but there's also a way to become contract and that kind of thing. And it's not, we're not forced. We're not like some countries where, I mean, if you look at most of Europe, you have to take a written test, and if you don't take that, and if you don't do well on that written test, you don't go to college. You go into a trade. If you don't pass this test with, a certain score, well, not that you're too dumb, but you're too dumb to go to college. You have to, you get to go to a trade, which is great. I mean, you just, that's what, when they give you free college, that's what happens is, if you don't pass a certain level, they're not going to waste their money on sending you to college because there's no reason to. And so being in America, we still aren't to that level where they make you work a certain job or a certain career path or any of that. You don't have to choose between the 3 career paths that they have for you and that kind of thing. You literally, you can choose whatever you want. You can get in your job. You can not get in your job. You can become a freelance, freestyle worker, kind of like I am now. And you do what you got to do. You make your money. You do your hustles, and you're on to bigger and better things. You claim what you claim to the government, and pay your taxes, and you're a business, and you're a business based on your name. You got the pride of your name in that. And some people just, they don't make great employees. And I've kind of felt like, or I've kind of seen that over the last 10 or so years, that maybe I don't make a great employee, but I do a good enough job as a leader, as someone who is confident enough to jump into their own businesses, that I can come in and help out and do a great project, get some things done. But when it comes down to doing the bureaucracy, I may not be able to filter myself as well as others, if you get my gist. So I can be brash, and I can and one of my big complaints about working in a corporate environment is nothing ever gets done. In my last job, I worked for a while. I worked the night shift, the third shift, and I was a training coordinator, and at nights there's no corporate managers, there's no oversight from the we called them blue vests, but the operations guys and stuff like that. And so you just kind of you make the decisions, you get things done, and you push the ball along. And you sometimes pay for it in the morning when they say, why did you do that already, or why did you have what are you doing? And and sometimes it's also not as formal, getting things done. And so when I moved to the daytime shifts, it was better for my family. But when it came down to, doing all of the corporate schmoozing and things like that, I was great with the people and with my guys. I built this great loyal team. But then when it came to, I would go to get things done, it was, no, we got to wait a week. No, we need to train you. No, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do it this way? Well, because this is the way I've been doing it for a year, or this is the way that we did it at nights, that we got things done, and we had great teams. And I think that's why sometimes we see, those smaller companies are quicker and faster, can kind of move on a dime, and you've seen some of these smaller tech giants and stuff like that be able to move into areas where the bigger companies couldn't move, because they were able to kind of reinvent themselves a lot quicker, where a company like Microsoft or a company like Apple, couldn't move that quickly, or couldn't slide that fast into things, but in the realm of things could afford to make the move slower, like Apple TV is right now, and Apple Plus or whatever that is, that they're now sliding into, they just picked up the MLS account for streaming, paid a hefty sum to start streaming all of the MLS games. And what's different is they were big enough to spend the money, but they weren't like a lot of these other companies, CBS and Fox and those guys, that they already had contracts with certain names and certain people. They're just going to build it straight from the ground up, and they have that kind of money. But they also weren't agile enough to move their company around quickly, with the Netflixes and the Hulus and things like that, to start out with in the very beginning. Now they're just now coming on, and because they have gobs and gobs of money, they can kind of swallow that learning curve. So I think back to kind of what we were talking about, with companies having to now reestablish their workers as employees. Some of that also is the government wants your tax money. They want to be able to tax every hour that you work. Because if you work as a business, there are write offs like materials, there are write offs like um, utilities. If you have an office to rent, if that you rent, if you have property, if you have a truck, if you have a car, if you have, you know, tuba lessons that you have, whatever it is that you have to run your business, you can write that off as material expenses, depending on in whatever manner that within the law. And so if they get your hourly rate, they literally are getting a piece of every hour that you work. Where when it comes down to you being a business, maybe they don't get quite as much, or maybe you don't make money at all after all of the, paying yourself and paying this and paying that. They get a somewhat smaller amount. And the government wants to also control your money. I mean, the more that they can get you into getting a direct deposit and getting that money, being able to track that digital currency that's coming down the pike that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that they want to be able to move it into one currency. And I mean, be on the lookout for that real soon here. China's already gone to a full digital currency. And Biden's talked about digital currency already, that he's looking into what the digital currency would look like for America. Look at and we've talked for the last almost 10 years now about the penny. It costs us about 2 cents to make a 1 cent penny. So that seems really intelligent on our behalf. But if we didn't have those pennies and we had to round everything to the nearest 5 cents, not that would be chaos, but then the nickel would literally become basically a penny. It would move, which with inflation, we've already, we're sitting at I heard estimates of 150% inflation right now, or 148% inflation from when Biden took office. So just a little under 2 years ago. And, so we're already seeing that the nickel is really the penny. I mean, you used to be able to buy nickel candy and penny candy and things like that, and that's just a silly anecdote. But if you look at real things like gas, or like even go out and try to buy some hamburger for $5 a pound, go look for that. You may be able to find it, but it's going to be few and far between, and you're not going to find it at your regular grocery stores or big box or regular box stores. You're going to find it maybe at a place like a Sam's Club or something like that. So the big thing is, governmental wise, is, they hired 87,000 new IRS agents, or they're working on hiring 87,000 new IRS agents. They just took, think about all the salaries that is, if that's an average, $50,000, $60,000 salary. Let's say 50 for easy math, that's close to, $4 billion just for IRS agents that they could be using, somewhere else, somewhere that makes it a lot more sense. But, in the grand scheme of things, that the money that they're going to spend on those guys is a drop in the bucket based on, our debt to China and other societies. So, what's another 87,000 if we're going to you weaponize them to move on and grab some more money. If we can weaponize them against people, totally take their wealth, then that's one less person that is a drain on society, and that's one less person that is going to vote us out of office, and one less person that that we need to worry about. So something also to be just to move on to the next kind of thing is, have you seen this FBI overreach that they've had over the last week or so here, where people who are demonstrating outside of outside of um, the abortion clinics are being arrested by the FBI. I mean, just like guy was charged with. They try to charge him with harassment in front of the local abortion clinic, and his court case had been thrown out a year and a half ago, and come to find out, he's getting ready to go to work. Kids are running out to the car to get in so that he can take them to school. FBI agents hold them at gunpoint and smash on his windows in the front and then on his door. And guns drawn on him when he opens the door. Arrest him for blocking an entrance to a abortion or a clinic. So I mean, this thing is real. This fight is not over. Honestly, the devil is not happy about it. This was a kick in his teeth, and I'm sure some heads rolled in the demon population for this this being able to take place. But we have to keep our heads on a swivel. I mean, they're coming for us. It was like 16 people have been arrested by the FBI in the last week for blocking clinics and blocking entrance to a clinic. And half of these people weren't blocking entrances. They were out there praying or demonstrating and just, trying to educate people that were coming in. And it's an attack on religion. It's an attack on human rights, because I thought we had the First Amendment and we were allowed to peaceably gather in protest. I obviously I'm wrong. We're only allowed to burn, loot, and steal, and only when it becomes a racial issue. Which, I mean, if you look at abortions are probably 5 to 10 times more likely in the black community. If you go down the road of conspiracies and you look at where abortion clinics are set, where Planned Parenthood has set up, it's mostly inner cities. You don't see a lot of their clinics in rural areas. It's mostly urban hubs. And you can kind of draw the line down that maybe that's a way that we figured out how to suppress the population, and not we as in me, but we as in the government, or we as in high society, or we as in the populace that is over the is the 1%. If you really want to get angry at those guys, get angry that they are for one thing, ruling the world. That it's not just one. It's not just, oh, they don't pay their fair share in taxes. Well, I mean, they employ 90% of the world. I mean, if you look at small business is great, but small business doesn't employ most of the world. It's all these big companies that employ a lot of the world. What gets done is by the small businesses. But who employs them? Who employs the people? Mostly these big businesses. And if you didn't have them, or if you had less of them, there would be less people employed, honestly. Because most people don't want to stick their necks out to start their own company. And so, it's one of those deals where if we push this thing, where we're not looking at the right, when we get angry, we're not looking at the right anger. We're looking at, we're getting angry because CNN tells us that it's not our body anymore if we don't have abortions. It's still our body, and it's still our choice. We just have to make the choice at a different time and juncture. It's still completely your choice the whole way through. You just have to make that choice earlier. And, if you want to cry about the rape and incest deal, it's less than 1%. It's maybe just over 0.5% if you put it all together. All of this silly little, or not silly little, but all of the little issues that are really are important, that really are out of your train of thought or out of your decision making for why you had a baby. I mean, because I don't know if you know that it takes a minute. It takes a bit to have a baby. I mean, things have to go pretty right, even when they're going wrong. So even if it is rape or incest, I mean, things have to line up just about perfect. So it's only about 0.545% that actually end up in that situation. Otherwise, and that includes not only the rape and incest part of it, but that also includes the part that the baby could kill the mother could, or the pregnancy could kill the baby, or the baby could have a major medical issue and never quite be right type thing, or may come out with very, very little short time to live, that you would maybe make that decision that, there would not be a quality of life issue. And that is all encompassed into that. It's not like, oh, it's 5% this and it's 4% this and it's 6. All of that encompassing is about 0.5453%, something in that range. And so the rest of we talked about this in the podcast. The rest of the answers, the rest of the reasons why we didn't, we weren't able, or we didn't want to carry this baby, or we didn't want to carry this baby. It was, I couldn't financially support it. Well, nobody can. Like, I can't afford $1 million over the next 18 years to support my baby, which is now like $1.5 million because of inflation over the last 2 years, which is probably actually more like $2 or $3 million to support my kid, because I heard the statement back like 10 or 15 years ago that it cost about $1 million from day one to whatever day it is, 18 years later, or now 26 years later, that your kid moves out of your house. And so it cost around $1 million to raise a child. Well, you figure it out somehow. Everyone does. And those lives go on to be, talk show hosts or presidents or welders or garbage men or whoever, but whoever they go on to be, they affect someone's life around them. They're not just born, go to the gutter. Those people are lives that can and will affect other people's lives. And so I think we figured it out, like 98% of the questions or the reasons why were, it wasn't the right time in their life for it. They didn't have a career, or they were working on a career instead. Just all kinds of different things. And this is no condemnation to those who have had abortions and that, but it is a decision. Then it's a decision that you made, and it's not a health reason or a health issue. It becomes a cosmetic surgery, basically, because you didn't want a part of you to be there anymore. Like a facelift or a mole being removed or something a little more serious than that. But that's basically what you've decided. So, but going back to what I was talking about, to what started this, the government is getting bigger and bigger. So keep your eyes open, keep your head out, because our First Amendment on this is being impeded. I mean, you're allowed to. The First Amendment says you're allowed to peacefully gather in protest, in public places, for the express purposes of giving your side of an issue. We are allowed to speak in any way we want. I mean, we allow the KKK to go on to your downtown streets and burn the flag and burn the crosses and things of that nature, but we can't pray in front of a clinic because it makes you feel bad. We're not stopping, Black Lives Matter from busting into banks and private properties when a black person is shot by the police. Whether that black person was shot legally, illegally, because for any reason they broke the law, or I could see if we had just a police issue where they were just we were losing 30 or 40 black people, or even 5 or 6 black people a month, maybe even a year, for just senseless shootings by the police. They were just wrangling them up, and just even if it was just they were just wrangling up one or two here or there. We had a rogue police department that were just or the president was quietly saying we need to get rid of these people, or some entity, the FBI, the Stasi, whatever, was just saying that we needed to get rid of this group of the population, whether it was black people, yellow people, whoever, purple people, people with big noses, those who have beards, any of those, and they were just rounding them up and either putting them in camps or just executing them. And we had an issue like that because there are countries that they have that. It isn't a far-fetched idea. I mean, we've had issues with China treating their people terribly. If you want to go and really, really push the envelope and look into the Ukraine election, when when they had the election, somehow the opposing party, all of a sudden, some of them got rounded up and thrown in prison for insurrection. I mean, it just seemed like it was just it was definitely a coincidence. It as much as you can believe in coincidence, it had to have been. It was a coincidence. Those guys just happened to be insurrection, part of an insurrection that was, looking to overthrow the government. That's what it was. Is they weren't trying to get voted in. They were trying to overthrow. Well, that's what an election is. Every 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, you can overthrow your government with your votes, which is a great segue to what's coming in the next few weeks. I've got a great guest. Moggs is going to be on, and he's doing some big time research for next week's podcast, and we're going to hear what he has to say about elections, whether we should vote anymore, whether it's worthwhile to vote, whether they're just stealing the elections, or and the history behind it. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be awesome. But we get into that, and that's part of our part of the world. If you look around and you see that you want to help something, there isn't systemic. It's not systemic. We want to talk about everything systemic racism, some systemic, all of this, that we have a systemic problem, and it's not a system. It's cultural. It can be very cultural, but at the same time, the majority of anything is going to be the ruling class anywhere. You know, in Africa, if you look around, except for in South Africa, the rulers are are African. They're black. That you know, because they're the majority. And in other areas, in other countries, in other places, it's different. In South America, they're all Latino, or they're all South American, or they're all Latin American. And so that's because they're the majority. You see once in a while a white guy, but a Caucasian, if you even know what that is anymore because of our education system. But that's the majority. You're gonna vote for, most of the time, someone who looks like you, unless you're smart enough to look at what they're actually saying. Which, as a country, we are definitely not that anymore. We look at what CNN says or what blah 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 says, and then we vote for the history of it. Well, the history of it has never gotten us anywhere. If we voted for the history of being a liberated country, we would not have voted for it, because there was no history of countries liberating from other countries. We started it. The only other the main big time liberation, France had revolutions every 4 months, it seemed like. England lost a country here and there over the last 50 years, but basically Rome and Attila the Hun's area and those kind of things, they just changed hands. Rome and the Roman Empire changed hands. It became the Greek Empire, and then it became English, and then the Middle East and things of that nature. So it just countries don't just break off and lose major parts of their countries without major fighting. And we had major fighting, but we succeeded. And in that, we became a great country. And somehow over the last 5 to 10 years, over the last 20 to 30 years, we've lost that. And I think it started 50 years ago when we thought, well, we can do this better. We can be more fair. Well, the only actual fair is when nobody gets a leg up. No one gets helped. No one gets any special treatment. Because when we start treating people special, we have to treat other people crappily. And so nobody's really special in this world. It's just the fact that, honestly, God loves us all. And somehow that is how we are all treated special, is that we have the choice to choose. And so from here, if you start to treat other people special, then other people get stomped on. And whether it's the majority or the minority, it's not fair, and it's not fun, and it isn't cool. And so if you're one of those that have felt stompled on or something like that, well, you're not special. Everybody gets that at some point in their life. I've seen it. I know that Honest David's seen it. Jay Boots has seen it. We've all been kicked, and we're white guys. We've been stepped down. We've been set down. We've been pushed back because of something else, somebody's age, race, or sex, and that should be considered ageism, sexism, or racism. And because we're not a minority, we're not protected, and that's fine. I live in America. I'll go on to the next thing. I won't make a big deal because I don't really care that much. If a company is going to, be racist, ageist, or sexist towards me, I don't want to work there anyways, and I can choose to work somewhere else. I can also choose to spend my money and help someone else. So, that's why when a company comes out with some major, exciting, oh, we're going to be so socially acceptable and we're going to do this. Nah, if I don't go with it, I haven't been in a Dick's Sporting Goods in probably 5 years now because I don't believe in the same things they do. If they didn't come out with their agendas, I don't care. I'll go shop there. But they come out with their agendas. I don't go to Field and Stream and I don't go to Dick's Sporting Goods, which is sad because there's some really great sporting goods stores in Columbus that used to be galleons and they had climbing walls and they're sweet. Well, they got bought out by Dick's. I won't go there ever again. There's 2-3 story buildings with just sporting goods and all the stuff that you could ever want, camping goods and everything. And nah, I'm done. I'm out. Peace out, guys. I'm done. I'm gonna take my money to Dunham's or somebody who hasn't told me how dumb they are. Sometimes a fool can remain in good standing and look smart if they just shut up and don't say something. And maybe that's where I should be, is I should just be shutting up and not saying something. But at the same time, all it is for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. And so I feel like at least this is me, at least putting my mouth in sometimes my foot in my mouth, but sometimes just putting my mouth out there and trying to help out. So yeah, well, that's pretty much the podcast tonight. Remember to follow, like, and share us. This is the Why I'm Angry podcast. Kicking out.
Remember to follow, like, and share the Why I'm Angry podcast across all social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcast. The Why I'm Angry podcast ends now.